All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to the Scott Institute for Energy Innovation. This is our lecture series. We are so grateful that you're here to join us today to hear from today's distinguished speaker, Ken Schoeneck, to talk about some of the very exciting things happening at Trane Technologies. Before I get to that, if you're unfamiliar with the Scott Institute, we are CMU's campus-wide hub for all things energy. We address the most pressing energy challenges. We host these lectures. We give out seed funding each year to help kind of grow new energy research areas. We provide support for new energy research initiatives. So the Scott Institute has faculty all across campus in computer science, in architecture, in engineering, in the Mellon College of Science. So you might imagine that we might need to have something like a central convener to bring all of these different interdisciplinary parts of campus together to work on these big challenges. We also provide support for energy startups. So innovation is in our name. We are extremely passionate about making sure that the technologies being developed beyond the within the walls of our laboratories have a life beyond the walls of campus and help drive the energy transition. And we also host many energy-themed events, such as the lecture you are at today. So at the end of the day, we seek to encourage the development of breakthrough technologies, systems, and policies towards driving forward the energy transition. If you're not all signed up for our newsletter, I highly recommend taking out your phone, taking a quick picture of that QR code. Our newsletter, it's just monthly. It is basically the one-stop shop for all things happening, all the exciting activities happening in energy at Carnegie Mellon, just once a month. And we advertise events such as this in that newsletter. Other ways to stay in touch, if you email that email address, it'll reach me, it'll reach everyone on our team. If you have any questions about activities within the Scott Institute, one of us will answer. We're also on LinkedIn, Twitter, aka X, and we're on the web as well. So without further ado, this brings us to today's main event. So Trane Technologies is the Scott Institute's first ever private sector Grand Challenge partner, and you're going to be able to interact, folks in the audience, faculty, staff, and students are going to be interact with this Grand Challenge partnership in a number of ways, some through coursework, some through interdisciplinary research, etc. But Trane, we're very picky with our Grand Challenge partners, and we only want to partner with forward-thinking companies at the frontier of climate change mitigation and adaptation. And a key person driving this at Trane Technologies is today's speaker. So Ken Schoeneck brings more than 3 decades of experience to his role. He started as an intern in 1987 at Trane Technologies, and now he is helping lead the charge on sustainability at the company. He has extensive experience working in Trane's business units and has been an integral to the development and deployment of Trane Technologies' business operating system, including their model product growth teams and portfolio management tools. He's partnered with the information technology and advanced manufacturing engineering teams to advance automation across the company, all critical areas of the company's success today and the future. So Ken holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Mechanical Engineering from Iowa State University, go Cyclones, and a Master of Science degree in Mechanical Engineering from Lehigh University. So Ken, it is our pleasure. The stage is yours.
Thanks, Daniel. Appreciate it. Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm not going to stand behind the podium. I hate to be trapped behind things when I speak publicly. Hopefully you can hear me in the back. Good? Okay. Good to be back to Pittsburgh. Good to be back to Pennsylvania. I was born and raised in Easton, Pennsylvania. So the last exit before you cross the Delaware River into New Jersey. And great to be here today. We're really excited about being the first corporate sponsor of the Grand Challenge. We think we have some pretty hard questions to answer. And frankly, as much as I like to think we can answer them ourselves, we actually are looking forward to the engagement with Carnegie Mellon to help bring some thought leadership to some of these areas and really help us advance ourselves as well, outside in, if you will, kind of thinking into the company. A little bit about Trane Technologies first. A company by the name of Ingersoll Rand acquired Trane in 2008. So if you know who Ingersoll Rand is, they're primarily a rotating equipment company It was a diversified industrial company, and they acquired Trane Trane Air Conditioning in 2008. And so over the years, we've been operating as a company by the name of Ingersoll Rand. In 2019, I guess it was, early 2019, we announced we were going to split the company in two. We had a group of climate-focused businesses, and we had a group of industrial-focused businesses. And basically, we were going to sell our industrial businesses to a company by the name of Gardner Denver, and we were going to stand up a publicly traded company by the name of Trane Technologies. So during the course of 2019, we finalized the transaction in February 29th of 2020. Gardner Denver acquired our industrial assets, changed their name to Ingersoll Rand, because the brand of Ingersoll Rand was a powerful brand in the marketplace. And we started a publicly traded company traded on the New York Stock Exchange under the symbol TT on March 1st, 2020. 2 weeks later, we went into COVID, right? So here we are, right? But we went through that last year, 2019 into 2020, for the people that were going to remain with Trane Technologies. We really spent a lot of time talking about how we were going to transform the company, so that when we stood up this new company in 2020, it was a company that we felt were solely focused on climates, we're solely focused on HVAC, we're solely focused on refrigerated transport. We have the opportunity to be a climate innovator. We wanted to be a 100-year-old startup company when we stood the company up in March of 2020. So we spent about a year talking through how we were going to go doing that. And we believe we're a leading climate innovator globally in terms of heating and cooling spaces and heating and cooling vegetables and food and those kind of things as well. And we saw a few things in front of us. Well, a little bit about Trane first. We are 100% focused on sustainability. And I'll talk a little bit about sustainability in a very broad sense. It's not just reducing carbon footprint of our customers. It's not just reducing global warming potential of refrigerants. It's how we operate the company, how we govern the company, how we treat our people. It's all about our diversity and inclusion initiatives. All of that, we believe, helps to create a sustainable company. We're about an $18 billion company, and we have about 40,000 plus associates. I think the number is more like 42,000 associates around the world globally thinking about sustainability. It's core to our strategy as a company. When we came into the transformation of the company, we felt we had an unbelievable set of macro trends going on in the world right now. Everybody knows about climate change, right? What's happening with the global warming, and we got to bend the curve. But there were a number of things going on in the world that were happening that really played to what this climate innovator could be to our customers. Demographics are changing. The percentage of males to females in a public workplace is changing. So you got gender equality happening, you've got racial equality happening, you got ethnic equality happening. And so we really have an opportunity to have a much stronger workforce in terms of thought leadership by having this very diverse demographic change happening in the world. Urbanization is happening globally, right? People are moving out of the country closer to cities. The demand for heating and cooling solutions is only going to increase. The demand for energy is only going to increase. And we have to figure out, from an innovation standpoint, how we can enable that to happen quickly and have a minimal impact on the environment. The world, everybody throws the word digital out today, right? But we really think, and I'll talk in a little bit later, we really think through a digital connected world, we can really help bend the curve if our equipment is connected. And we're using things like machine learning and artificial intelligence to operate equipment more efficiently. When you look at the landscape of Pittsburgh, you have a lot of 1920s, 1930s, 1940s home running very inefficiently today, right? How do we tomorrow put some of those new equipment, connected devices in a 1920, 1930 home and have it run optimally all the time. And then we know what's going on with resource scarcity around the world. Water, availability of food. It's just something that we have to think about as a company to help raise the bar for those less fortunate than us. Our chairman uses this, or our CEO, Dave Regnery, picture on the right, he uses this phrase, one company can change an industry and one industry can change a world. And we really think that we're in a place where we can be a disruptor in that space because we feel like we have a 25% impact on global warming or CO2 emissions that are happening in the world. 15% of all CO2 emissions comes from the built environment, whether it be buildings in the Pittsburgh landscape or residential. And another 10% comes from inadequate transportation of food and food rotting, CO2 emissions from the food. So we feel as a company in our industry, we have a significant opportunity to help bend the curve globally. We think about our company in three main areas, and I talked a little bit about the sustainability aspect of that a little bit, but we have a purpose, we have people, and we have innovation. Our sustainability aspects of what we do, yes, we have products. Yes, we're working on global warming potential refrigerants. Yes, we're improving energy efficiency. Yes, we're improving understanding how systems are working in buildings and raising the energy efficiency of all that. But underpinning that is our people, our diversity and inclusion initiatives, and underpinning that is a corporate governance as well. We want to operate with the most highest ethical standards as a company. The second piece is around our culture and our people. By bringing global people together, by bringing diverse backgrounds together, we feel like those 40,000 plus associates are a powerful weapon. We feel we have the best people in the industry. And lastly, I'll talk a little bit about some of the sustainability investments that we're making. But we have a relentless pipeline of products and services that we're developing for our customers, and we're consistently investing above our peer group. A little bit about our sustainability commitments, and I talked a little bit about this. Ingersoll Rand a few years ago, before the split, we did a climate commitment. It was early days for a company to put out a climate commitment, and basically it was all about us. We were going to invest $500 million over a 5-year period into innovative products. We were going to reduce the carbon footprint of our facilities. We were going to reduce zero landfill or zero waste to landfill. It was all about us. So when we stood up the company in 2020, it was really about and we achieved those milestones a year early. And so in 2020, we put out our 2030 gigaton, and it wasn't about us anymore. It was about our customers. And we pledged that we would save our customers a gigaton of CO2 emissions by the year 2030. We pledged that we would also eat our own dog food, and we would reduce our own carbon footprints by an equal amount. And then lastly, in our sustainability commitments, creating an uplifting culture, we would create opportunities for all. And we've taken actions to do all that. We're ahead of our glide path on our Gigaton Challenge. We report all these numbers every year in our ESG report. The ESG report this year is, I just reviewed a draft. It's over 100 pages. It'll come out shortly. I encourage you to go to read it, where you can learn more about the specifics of what we're doing in each one of these three areas to really drive Trane Technologies as a climate innovator. And then we have a plan. And I know this is a bit of an eye chart, but we have a plan as well. Up top is kind of our 2020 commitments that we'll achieve by 2030. Gigaton Challenge achieved. Some of the internal Scope 1 and Scope 2 reductions that we're doing within our factories reduce 25% by the year 2025. We're on track for that. And we're not done. We see a pathway to 2050 where we could be a net zero company. And this is not a lot of greenwashing either. This has been externally validated by the Science-Based Target Institute 3 times. We're the only company to go back to STI 3 times and have our targets, have our calculations, and have our methodology based in science. And Net Zero Standard has approved us as well. A little bit about our people. First of all, our executive leadership team. I'm not going to spend too much time on naming all the faces, but we have a leadership team that is really driven through the company, our leadership principles. And I think it's important today to talk a little bit about some of these leadership principles, right? We're going to work for a sustainable tomorrow. That's that sustainability mindset that we have as a company. We're going to keep our customers at the heart of everything that we do. Hence the Gigaton Challenge, doing what's right for our customers. We're going to include and uplift our people. We're going to make better happen as a company. We're going to dare to do things differently. We're going to own our actions, and we're going to do what's right always. All that is part of our leadership principles. And if you talk about the leadership team of our company, we spend a lot of time talking about our leadership principles, not only at a ELT C-suite level, but all the way down to an associate on a factory floor. We believe people, optimistic people, are what fuels the company. And we measure our employee engagement every year. And we have like 30, well, maybe 50 or so accurate or sets of data and everybody in the company participates in the employee engagement survey. We put actions together in place. We work with our teams. We build action plans around that, and we're making things better every day. We've been recognized externally. I'm not going to go through all these, but the one that I'm proud of is this latest one, inaugural edition of the Time World's Best Companies. We were recognized by Time as being one of the most, forward-thinking companies that are publicly traded. Talked a little bit about that. A little bit about our businesses. Trane Commercial. You'll find our equipment in buildings like this in every major marquee building around the world. We have heating and cooling solutions that we provide to buildings. We have control solutions that we provide to buildings. In the United States, in the United States just alone, we have 4,000 company-owned service technicians that get in the trucks every day and go service on our equipment, working with customers, putting that equipment constantly back on its most reliable and efficient balance point. We have a residential business. This is primary, and I should say the commercial business is a global business. We operate in the EMEA region, Europe, Middle East, and Africa region. We operate in Asia Pacific, and we operate in the Americas. Our residential business is primarily a North American business. We have a series of products that are ducted split systems. The US is typically a ducted market. The rest of the world is not a ducted market. So we have partners around the world that help us with those ductless opportunities in different parts of the world. But in North America, we manufacture our equipment here in North America for the residential ducted split system business. We have a complete line of thermostats and controls and running machine learning algorithms across all that. And we have of the 60 or so thousand dealers that are in North America, about half of those are, about 500 of those are Trane Comfort specialists, but they cover about 80% of our marketplace. And they're exclusive to Trane, and they carry our brand exclusively. I talked a little bit about food. We have our brand Thermo King that moves and transports foods, perishables in trucks. We have a line of bus air conditioning equipment for buses. We have a line of air conditioning equipment for rail, and we participate in the global food chain with marine container reefer units as well. an extensive line of controls. Everything's telematically connected to the cloud, and we're getting real-time data off that equipment. And we can tell you where a particular container is, what's in the container, what temperature the container is being held at, and are we in the temperature ranges that we need to be for the particular piece of cargo that we're transporting. And new to the company over the past couple of years is COVID taught us a few things. COVID taught us a lot of things, right? But one of the things that COVID taught us was life sciences is going to be part of our future to come, right? And the way you transport, the way you manufacture vaccines and drugs, the way you transport vaccines and drugs, the way you distribute vaccines and drugs is all using very similar technologies that we use in the Trane and Thermo King businesses as well. So we made 3 acquisitions over the past 2 years for our scientific, who's really in the drug manufacturing side of things. Helmer, who's really in the distribution, where you go get your vaccine side of things. Thermo King plays a role in that, in the transportation of these vaccines. So we have the whole drug, we say food chain sometimes, we have the whole drug chain right now. And we bought Diversified Laboratory Repair last year, who helps us run a service network through all these pieces of equipment to make sure all the equipment is running optimally as well. Not to mention the many other acquisitions that we've made over the past, I'd say 3 years. Alco is an air handling business in Europe. American Standard is an alternative brand to the Trane Residential, American Standard Heating and Cooling. Frigoblock, we bought a few years in Germany. ICS Cool Energy, we bought in the UK a few years ago. MTA, we bought last year in Italy. And Thermocold is the company that we bought last year in Italy as well. All focused on climate innovation, the vapor compression cycle, and optimizing what we can do across the company in terms of how we design, how we manufacture, how we distribute, and how we operate and service and control through services. So lastly, we believe in a stronger world. We believe we're a climate innovator. We're guided by a purpose. We're propelled by our people, and we feel like we're driving innovation every day. I have a second deck. So there's a little bit about the company first, but are there any questions that I can answer about the company first? Yeah.
When you were talking about the sustainability initiative,
Yeah.
How much in control is the company regarding their own scope 3 emissions?
Our own scope 3 emissions? Well, we're in control of our scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, to be honest with you, right? So scope 1, scope 2 side of things, we built our millionth condensing unit with green steel just a couple months ago, right? So we're controlling scope 1 and scope 2, right? We're validating alternative metallurgy to of aluminum to be green aluminum. And we envision a day where we're building a green product, right? So we spend as much time in scope 1 and scope 2, our supply chain, if you will, and our own internal. We spend as much time in scope 1 and scope 2 as we do in scope 3. The 20 by 25 initiative is all about our scope 2 emissions, our own house. So leading by example, eating our own dog food I talked about earlier, right? How control are we in scope 3? We're very in control of scope 3 because you got to remember every piece of equipment that we sell is connected, right? And so you'll have a controller, go to a BMS system goes to the cloud, you run analytics in the cloud, and with the customer's permission, we can constantly recommission that piece of equipment. Did I do that? It's going to get real dark in here pretty soon. But we can continuously recommission that piece of equipment back to its original design point, right? We have a customer we talked about earlier this morning. 250 outlets in US, and through connected controls, we can predict what's going to happen in that facility 4 hours in advance of the cooling, and be ready through machine learning and AI to be able to put that building in a good spot. And we're saving a customer 37% on their energy bill, right? Now, they weren't interested in the savings. They were interested in the CO2 carbon footprint from that by being able to run, instead of turning a rooftop unit on, running it all day, turning it off, or sometimes forgetting to turn it off. We now can do all that through connected devices. So we're very much in control of our Scope 3 emissions too.
Sort of related to that, could you talk about how much of your business is leasing and operating equipment for customers versus selling them a unit and then handing over some operations manuals and, it may or may not be operated efficiently?
Oops, I'm going the wrong way. ICS Cool Energy is a rental business. We have a large rental business in North America as well, where a customer has, an outage in their building, right? Piece of equipment goes down. They'll call us. We'll roll a chiller. We'll plug it in right in the parking lot, and that's a service that we provide all day. We operate it. The customer doesn't have to do anything about it, right? So how much of our business? I don't think I can tell you that.
The way you can get solar panels that someone else owns, they're maintaining them, they're operating them. I'm just.
Yeah, we don't get into maintaining solar panels or anything like that.
But your equipment, isn't it a big problem that some clients, especially residential, people don't maintain equipment, they don't really know how to operate it very well?
Yep. On the commercial side, like I said, we have 4,000 service technicians just in North America, right? So on the commercial side, I'd say half of our business in the Americas is rental and service, okay? Now, in North America, in the residential space, you gotta remember a dealer, a Trane dealer, the person that you buy the equipment from as a homeowner, you sit down at the kitchen table, you negotiate a price, you agree on the scope, and you buy the equipment from them, they're not part of Trane. They are not our employees. They are local, independent business people, right? Now, that TCS dealer that I talked about, the Trane Comfort Specialist, right? They are exclusive Trane, right? So they come and they do all the Trane training, and the reason why they're exclusive, the reason why they get the attention that they get is because we get 100% of their business. They're loyal to Trane. They want to see Trane do well, right? We had dinner last night. We talked about Johnny One Truck, right? The HVAC service technician, he's got a pickup truck. He goes and gets a condensing unit at a place, rolls it in the back of his pickup truck, drops it onto the driveway, takes it to the side of your house. Generally, they're not Trane dealers, right? They're more of the cheaper brands, the entry-level non-SEER brands, right? Your point around residential and a typical homeowner doesn't know how inefficiently or effectively they're running that piece of equipment is absolutely true. But through connected equipment, but through data in the clouds, but by giving that data to a Trane Comfort Specialist, where they can run where they can run the analytics that we provide to them, they can roll a truck with the right parts, with the right service technician before an outage happens. So, but that's not our business. That's, Bryant Heating and Cooling in, Wilmington, North Carolina, right? Yeah.
So I work in helping create small companies out of CMU, so I'm curious about your comments about the acquisition. So two questions. One is, what size of company, how big does a company need to be in terms of revenues or whatever before they're a target for acquisition? And do you ever invest in companies earlier than that?
They don't have to be any target. They don't have to be any dollar size to be a target. They have to be in what we perceive to be high growth verticals, right? Like for our scientific, for instance, in the life sciences business, wasn't a big company, right? But it got us in a high growth vertical, got us a presence in the life science business, something that was going to take off. And we saw the forward opportunity of being in life sciences. We've since made 2 other acquisitions in that space, right? So we don't think about size of company. We think about capability the company brings that enables us to get into new markets that are high growth vertical markets, right? The second thing is we're not going to go. We learned our lesson when we were part of Ingersoll Rand, right? We had tools, we had air compressors, we had club car golf carts, we had, residential HVAC equipment, we had Schlage locks, commercial locking solutions in commercial buildings. We were just a holding company of companies, right? And we weren't getting rewarded by Wall Street with the PE multiple that we felt we deserved because we had these highly cyclical type companies in the portfolio and kind of a thing. So it has to align with our thought around being a climate innovator. 100% of what we do, well, we do air handling is probably going to reduce the number. I'll say 85% of what we do is in the vapor compression cycle. It's got compressors, it's got heat exchangers, it's got systems, it's got controls, it's got telematics. All of that is leverageable across the company now as Trane Technologies. When we were Ingersoll Rand, none of it was leverageable across the company. So it's really important that it fits from a technology standpoint into the portfolio, and it's really important that it fits from a high growth vertical.
The second part of that,
and the second,
is a corporate VC.
We have third-party firms that bring VC opportunities to us, and we invest through our firms out in California. We don't directly invest in startup companies. We've made a few strategic investments, specifically in the data center area, because we see data centers as being a high growth. They buy a lot of chillers today to cool those racks, right? What happens if they don't need chillers anymore, right? Our business just dries up overnight, right? So we've made a few direct VC investments into some areas that we just want to make sure that we understand what's going on in some of these high growth verticals from a technology standpoint. Yeah. Any other questions? All right. So a little bit about the company overview. Now I'm going to give you a little bit of so we have 3 main strategies as a company beyond the people, culture, and innovation. Decarbonization is the first pillar for the company, right? And as we talk about decarbonization, we think about electrification of heat and electrification of transportation, okay? The second one is the digital connectiveness of the world, and how can that drive value for us, and how can that drive a service proposition for us as well. And the third one is around focusing on high growth verticals, like I talked about earlier, data centers, chip manufacturing, EV, battery manufacturers, semiconductors, all need huge amounts of cooling to be able to do what they need to do in their businesses, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit about decarbonization, but first some terminology, right? Decarbonization, what is it? Taking carbon, CO2 emissions out of a process, out of the atmosphere, sorry. Carbon neutral is when the greenhouse gas released equals the greenhouse gas removed or avoided. We talk a little bit about what's going on in the grid, and this is why we're so interested in working with Carnegie Mellon, is what you all do with regards to understanding the electrical infrastructure, generation side, distribution side. We like to think we understand what's going on in the demand side, but we don't understand the supply side. So a partnership with Carnegie Mellon can help us think through, as we make strategic decisions around decarbonization, how do we understand what's going to happen to the electrical infrastructure so that when we say heat pumps is the answer, we can answer the next question, which is, Yeah, but what's going to happen to generation? What's going to happen about renewables? What's going to happen about batteries? What's going to happen about solar? We want to get smart about that. So we're really looking forward to spending time with Carnegie Mellon in this grand challenge. And we talked a little bit about Scope 1 and Scope 2 and actually Scope 3 emissions before, so I'll move on. So this slide, my communications team gave me a slide with buildups. So how do we think about direct emissions, right? Electrification can help affect direct emissions, and we've spent a lot of time around, and what does that mean, space heating and cooling, right? We can talk a little bit about refrigeration transport as well. Electrification is happening in the transportation industry, as you know, from EVs, but those long-haul tractor trailers will electrify over time. The short-haul milk run trucks of vehicle-powered trucks and self-powered trucks are electrifying right now. You're starting to see some of the new Amazon vans coming out that are fully electric, right? And so traditional fuel-powered compressors are going to need to be electrified in a transportation application, right? Traditional fans that are belt-driven off a main engine that drives that compressor are going to electrify, right? So we have to think about refrigerated transportation as the long-haul and short-haul trucking industry changes. We spend a lot of time around refrigerant management. Every one of our service technicians is certified to reclaim refrigerants off of a piece of equipment. And so when we go through a conversion, and I'll talk about refrigerants in a little bit, when we go through a conversion of, say, R410A, a refrigerant that has a global warming potential about 1900, to R454B, which has a global warming potential of about 466, they're reclaiming that 410. They're taking it back and they're having it recycled to be used in other 410 pieces of equipment or disposed of property, okay? And then we talked about Scope 3 emissions, which is really about, energy efficiency and optimizing the built infrastructure with our equipment in the building. And we do that through controls and real-time responsive buildings. Another building. Oh, okay. So let me just click through all this first here. So you heard me talk about most of this. Electrify heating. I'll give you an example in our own facility. We have a facility in Charmes, France. They make chillers for the EMEA marketplace. They had a gas boiler in the factory. Typical factories have gas boilers in the factory. You need hot water to paint things. You need hot water to clean things. You may need some steam to run some paint booths and those kind of things. We took the gas boiler out and we put in a heater instead of a chiller. So we're achieving leaving water temperatures of 200 degrees Fahrenheit, with a chiller and a booster combination. And we've completely eliminated the use of gas in our facility. We're doing the same exact thing in our facility in Taichung, China. And we're talking about doing the same thing in La Crosse, Wisconsin, right? So if we can do that in our own factories, why can't our customers do that as well, right? Go ahead.
Can you just describe that a little more step by step? You take out the gas boiler.
Yep.
There's already a chiller there?
No.
So they've had no chilled water?
They had chilled water, but they didn't have heated water. Well, they had chilled, so they run the chillers for chilled water in the factory, right? But we put in a chiller and a booster to get to 200 degree F and replace the boiler.
So you're still delivering chilled water, and now you're delivering hot water.
And we needed chilled water year-round, and we needed hot water year-round as well, right? And so all we did was just took the heater and took it out.
And the booster is a heat pump or electrical system, or what is it?
It's
What's your booster?
It takes, Erica, help me out here.
So think of, in a chiller, you're rejecting heat, right? In a traditional chiller, you're rejecting heat outdoors. Now we're just using that heat. So in cases where we can just reuse that heat and heat the building, great, we're set to go. In many cases, we need something much hotter than that rejected heat. So we stack another chiller on top of that existing chiller, and it becomes on the cold side is the rejected heat, and on the hot side is now much hotter water.
Yeah.
So it is a heat pump. But we still
We call it a booster.
call it a chiller booster.
It's a chiller booster, right? So you're taking the heat from the environment, running it through an air-cooled device, going from maybe like minus 35 degree F to 90 F, 95 F, and then you're boosting 95 F to 200 through another thing that looks like a chiller, but is really a heater, okay? And that is the booster is typically a water-to-water device, right? The chiller is an air-to-water device. The booster is a water-to-water. So you're taking the 90 going to 200, and so it's typically a water-to-water device. For our business and in our Thermo King business, we can get the ambient down to minus 80, and we do that through a cascaded system, right? So same concept, but it's just refrigerant to refrigerant in both the high side and the low side.
How does it compare total cost of operation? Carbon is super, but what is
COP3 versus COP1. COP3 or 4 versus a COP1. Burning fuel is 1 or less. Burning gas is 1 or less.
electricity could be 3 times more expensive than gas?
We don't
Could
care.
be a wash.
We don't care about that. We care about the CO2 emissions, right? We do care about it, but through productivity in the facility, we offset these investments every time. Our businesses are really booming right now in data centers. Our factories are full, and so we are 100% utilized. We're overutilized in our factories right now, so there's payback there.
And they're all renewable sourced electricity?
Yeah, we have contracts in the US, we have contracts in North America, in EMEA, and we have contracts in Asia too for renewable sourced energy. Okay, talked a little bit about refrigerant management. So January 1, 2025, got that right? Yeah, 25. The Montreal Protocol has mandated a series of step downs from basically 2000 to where we think is going to land at about 150 GWP by the year 2036. We're in the midst of a big step down right now. We're going from about 410, which is 1900, to less than 750. And we've done a tremendous amount of refrigerant research around what's the right physical properties, what's the right thermodynamic properties, what are the right oils that we should be using, because some of our compressors are oil devices. And we're in a step down right now, transitioning from 454, from R410A to R454B. 454B has a GWP of 466, not near 150 yet. We expect 2 more step downs to happen, one to be less than, say, 300, and another one less than 150. We think the US EPA would like us to be less than 10. And there's some challenges with that. So we spend a lot of time in refrigerant research. We spend a lot of time working with chemical companies, talking about what are the alternatives from refrigerants. There was a discussion last night at dinner about, are we considering propane? And in Europe, we are. We think in North America, we're a little more risk adverse, and we're much more litigious in North America than we are in Europe. So we see a pathway towards propane in North America. We have propane in our homes today. It really comes down to the right level of standards to be able to install and safely commission a propane device in North America. You fast forward 10 years ago, the 454B refrigerant that I talked about earlier is deemed a semi-flammable refrigerant, right? 410 is a non-flammable refrigerant. So we are moving, and we've spent 10 years, the past 10 years, spending time thinking about codes and standards, lobbying, building codes, getting to a place where even the fire marshals, believe it or not, are comfortable with a semi-flammable refrigerant in a home setting. So we see propane as in our future, and we're trying to understand that right now, not only in residential, not only in commercial, but in transportation as well. And if you think about like, propane in a rail car going through a tunnel, they have safety concerns as well. So all things to think about. We talked about old refrigerant. Building envelope, I'll talk a little bit about building envelope in a minute. This lines up almost exactly what you and we talked about earlier. Building envelope, automation systems, upgrade to highly efficient equipment, electricity and thermal storage. I mean, it was on-site generation. It was almost exactly what we say in our own slides as well. So we agree with you 100%. And then reducing grid emissions, it's really about controls and analytics and storage and really supporting, the need from the grid. So let's go. Okay, we think of decarbonization of buildings in 7 steps. Ultimately getting to a pathway to decarb and CO2 reduction. First, update the envelope, right? Improve the ability of the conditioned space, reduce the need for heating and cooling load. So update the envelope. I'm using the wrong button. Install building automation systems where buildings don't have building automation systems. And for buildings that do have building automation and systems, upgrade those building automation systems so that they work, right? Reducing energy costs. We think this is one of the biggest pathways to our gigaton challenge. When you look at the pathway in our residential business, so you'd think residential, my energy bill in my home is like $200 a month, and probably 70% of that is coming from HVAC. And so if I could reduce that, right, even a small amount, times the number of homes in North America, that's large CO2. We believe that 5% can be achieved through just better set points, better controlling, and better operating the equipment with more efficient equipment as well. Upgrade lighting. In a building, HVAC's probably worth about 40% of the electricity demand. Lighting is probably worth about another 30 or 40 as well, right? So upgrade lighting. We're not a lighting company. And I'll show you but we do run a energy services business. So where a customer will bring us in, we'll do an energy audit. Out of that audit, we'll make recommendations. Typically, some of those recommendations are improve lighting. We'll subcontract that out. It's a guaranteed energy savings to the customer. We guarantee the energy savings to the customer, and we share in that savings. Because we guarantee it, we share in that savings with the customer as well. Upgrade to heat pumps. Add storage. Electrify with heat pumps. I'm losing my. Add storage. And I don't mean electrical storage like batteries, but I do mean batteries. That's a form of storage. But we have a business where we make ice. So during the day, to heat and cool space, we'll melt ice. And we'll use that cold water that comes off the ice to cool the building when the electricity demand is high during the day. And then when the electricity cost is high during the course of the day. When the electricity cost is low at night, we'll run the chillers and remake that ice for the next day. In New York City, we use ice to heat buildings because it's colder outside than the temperature of ice. And so we call those thermal management systems, where we'll run those in combinations with heat pumps, making ice, burning ice, heating spaces, cooling spaces. And it's a systems approach. And I know here at Carnegie Mellon, you spend a lot of time talking about a systems approach. It's absolutely the right way to think about it. You can't think about it in terms of a piece of equipment in a system. You have to think about it as a system interoperating together and controlling it as well. On-site integrated energy storage through purchase energy contracts. We talked about that. and then use less energy when it's most expensive. Burning ice, demand scope 3 emissions, all there. Purchase renewable energy, we talked about that. Virtual power purchasing agreements, we talked about that. And generate on site. All things that we recommend to our customers and all solutions that we can bring to our customer when we're talking to them about their systems. So I talked a little bit about our comprehensive solutions or our energy services business. Since, what's the date? Where'd it go? 2017 to 2021, so over a 5-year period, we saved 2.367 million metric tons of CO2 guaranteed to our customer, and we reduced basically 5 gigawatts of demand with our customers through our energy contracting business. All guaranteed savings, all revenue for the company that we generated by sharing in those savings with our customers. And I think that's it. What questions, what other questions can I answer?
Yeah, I know some questions were asked during the lecture, which I think is great. I also have a microphone, so if we wanted to do a Q&A session, everyone in the room is easily able to hear the questions being asked. Would any of the students in the room like to ask the first question?
Thank you so much for your presentation. I think you'd mentioned earlier that one of the primary considerations of your residential customers is, climate change impacts. I was going to ask what the typical demographic of those customers might be. People living in low to moderate income communities, would probably, tend to prioritize either health impacts or energy savings in the home. But whenever you're, doing these building envelope upgrades and then installing this like highly efficient equipment, I guess my question is like, one, what are the typical demographics of the residential customers? And two, what does your company do to close that gap and eliminate some cost barriers to the communities that would benefit most from those investments?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I don't think we have a really good understanding and answer to that question too, to be brutally honest with you, right? And it's one of the reasons why we're excited to work with Carnegie Mellon too, is you have a policy side of things and social economic side of things as well. But what I will tell you is the typical homeowner doesn't care about their air conditioning until it breaks. Right? So they're not sustainability minded, they're not energy efficiency conscious. They are to a certain degree because they see the bill increasing month over month, right? And typically how they fix that is they go to the set point on the thermostat and take it up a couple degrees or take it down a couple degrees so that they can minimize the impact of their electricity bill, right? The average homeowner doesn't care about low GWP refrigerants. They understand global warming is happening, but the average homeowner doesn't understand the connection between GWP of refrigerants and their sustainability impact that they can have of things like that, right? With regards to your question, our dealers, again, who are independent businessmen and women in local geographies, they're very connected into all the incentives and rebates that utilities are given, Craigslist is giving, local gas companies is giving, and generally they are passing those rebates back to the homeowner right there as a reduction in the price. So they're passing those savings back almost instantaneously at the time of purchase, right? We don't spend a lot of time in our business in multifamily. Right, so typically lower income demographics. We don't spend a lot of time. Typically, multifamily applications would not be multiple condensing units, air handlers, ducted system in a multifamily environment, right? So we don't spend a lot of time in multifamily. We're primarily in residential single-family home type replacements and or new construction. So, good question.
Thank you for your presentation. Can you elaborate a little more on your energy services business that you talked about?
Yeah.
I think you mentioned a little bit about how you take part of these things, but can you explain in brief as to how it works from start to end?
Yeah, we have energy engineers, right, that work with our sales teams, and they'll go out and they'll audit a customer's building or campus. The one I'm most familiar with is Georgia World Congress in Atlanta, Georgia. Huge facility, convention center, right, where we went in with our ESCO team and we did a complete energy audit, right, at the circuit in a huge building, and really understood all the usage and demand and where everything was going, right? And from that, we came internally and said, okay, how can we make an impact to this, right? And we installed new chillers, we installed new ice tanks, we installed new lighting, LED lighting. We upgraded the controls, upgraded the BMS and all the building controls in the facility as well. And so when we analyzed all their gas bills, analyzed all of their electricity bills, and kind of put all that together in a solution, right? Did all that whole installation. And the solution, based upon the systems that we predetermined that they should be using, deliver a reduction in the energy cost, right? So what we do is we go float a bond. We guarantee that price. We go float a bond, right? If we exceed the guarantee, or if we don't deliver as much as we said we would, the cost is on us. If we exceed, and we're protected by the bond, if we exceed what we guaranteed, we share in the savings with that customer. Okay?
Quick follow-up. So do you invest in the capital investment is from your side, or the customer will invest for the new chiller?
Most times the customer pays, right? We've debated on cooling over the fence, where we own the assets and we just charge per CFM of cold water, right? But customers can't get their minds wrapped around that.
Could you talk a little bit about your partnership with CMU and what kind of information might be shared in that regard? That's one question. And then two, a lot of what you're talking about involves a business model that you might call auditing or surveying, because you're discussing uncertainty about a building or its occupants. Have you thought about trying to value that service as well and make that integrated as part of what you do?
Yeah. So the partnership with CMU, and we're specific around, so the abstract, can I shoot? Yeah. So the abstract is around what happens in a world of an electrified home, right? Our answer to decarbonizing the home is by heat pumps. Sooner or later, we're going to get the next question. And the next question is going to be, what's the impact of that on the electrical infrastructure? We don't know how to answer that question, right? And so it's pretty easy to answer the first question. We don't know how to answer the second question and all the other questions that are come, because we don't understand generation. We don't understand distribution, right? We don't understand the whole supply side of things. We kind of understand the demand side of things, but in a home that has a 30 amp panel, right? And if you start bringing EVs in and heat pumps in and solar and battery and all this other stuff, right? That 30 amp panel is gonna just have to get bigger, right? And so we're trying to leverage your expertise on the generation side or the demand supply side of things, marry that up with our expertise on the demand side of things, right? To try to understand how can we act smart in front of a customer to help them minimize the impact of buying a heat pump, right?
The one service that could come out of this in a couple of years is you have a really cost-effective way to help them understand the efficacy of a heat pump in a home.
Absolutely.
And I'm just wondering if there's
We're
a bunch of information that could help us.
Yep.
And, help you.
Yep.
Just kind of
we're hyper focused on bringing heat pumps to market at scale, right? And there's going to be implications of that, right? And so we have a lot of data. We plan on bringing that data, right? You have a lot of data. We're hoping you share that data with us too, right? Because I see a solution in the middle, right? And it's a hard problem to solve that you can't answer without really high fidelity modeling, right? And Monte Carlo simulations and all this other stuff to test the what ifs, right? And so we're hoping to be able to be smarter in that area, right? What was your second question?
Those are both.
Okay.
I'm answering both.
Okay. All right. Sorry.
Yeah, thanks. Really appreciate the presentation. Kind of leads, I guess, off some of what he was saying, but I was curious how, on the energy audit side, and, given your focus on refrigeration, how you kind of expand that audit outside, or not necessarily expand, but how you expand the effects of what you're doing with singular businesses outside of just that business, considering the network effects of, the decisions you're making and how you're changing the sort of energy usage of those particularly large commercial businesses.
Yeah, so one company that wasn't on a slide that we acquired last year was a company by the name of Novello. And they're a software company, basically is what they are, running on the ServiceNow platform. And they have connections to very large, I think I'm answering your question. If I'm not, stop me. They have connections to very large banks, right, who have branches and high-rise buildings everywhere in the country, right? And banks are interested in understanding what their carbon footprint is. So they provide through the ServiceNow platform a tool for them to understand what their carbon footprint is. But they can't answer the next question, which is, so what do I do about this, when the bank asks them the question, which is why we bought them, right? Because we bring the expertise in terms of, this is your asset base, this is your inventory of carbon footprint today. We bring the service, we bring the energy engineers, we bring the service people and say, we've analyzed all this information, this is what we should think you should do about it, like we did with Georgia World Congress. And we can put banks on a pathway to carbon neutrality, right? So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I think it covers part of it.
Okay. What was the other part that I didn't answer?
Yeah, it was more just around like the decisions you make, like impact the grid in the local area.
Yep.
Right? Or impact the changes in how your energy flows happen
Yep.
in the local area. So I was kind of trying to understand, what work you guys do outside of just looking at a specific business and what you can do for them, and how those affects, say the business next door has, a slightly different energy curve in terms of their demand curve, and how you can balance those, or whether you just kind of...
We stay away from that. We stay away from that. If we got enough capacity in the panel, we're going to put a new rooftop on the roof, right? But things we need to be smarter about too, because the impact of that in scale, maybe the 30 amp panel isn't big enough anymore, and we replace a 30 amp unit with a 30 amp unit, it ain't going to work anymore, right? So, yeah. Question? Oh, wait a minute. I got 5 hands going up. I'll start. Okay, you have the mic.
Thank you for laying out all of this talk, Ken. And you mentioned your decarbonization plans.
Yep.
And along that plan, what is your largest barrier or the challenge that you're facing? It sounds like you have a lot of things solved, maybe technologically, but either technologically, policy-wise, what is that biggest barrier or challenge that you're facing?
Is it our own emissions, or is it helping our customers?
To decarbonize the world, I would say.
Yeah, so if you look at, I I got to do an inventory of what my biggest problems are right now. So I talked a little bit about, and I'm kind of trying not to get too technical on you, but I talked a little bit about the transition from 410 to 454. There's 2 more step downs happening over the course of the next 12 years. Those refrigerants are what we would classify as high pressure refrigerants, okay? Which means they're high density refrigerants, and those refrigerants are typically used in residential systems, high pressure equipment, unitary rooftop, high pressure equipment, ductless VRF equipment, high pressure equipment, and some less than 100-ton chillers, right? As a company, that's probably about half our revenue, maybe a third, somewhere between 30 and 50%. From a chemistry and a thermodynamic standpoint, those refrigerants are the hardest refrigerants to get to zero, right? Because just to have the equipment operate and perform better than what we do today, right? So there's just the whole refrigeration system aspect thing of this, right? So if the US EPA comes out one day and says, less than 10, have a nice day, our industry does not have an answer for that, right? With regards to high pressure. We don't see a pathway, which is one reason why we're spending time thinking about propane. Propane, natural refrigerant, near zero, if not zero, right? That comes with another set of implications, right? So a third of our revenue to a half of our revenue is under attack by the regulators and the policymakers because they don't understand some of these technical challenges that we're having to deal with. There's a very large company in the US. They own a lot of distribution centers. They have like 10,000 of our rooftops sitting on all their distribution centers, right? They want to get to less than 10. All those rooftop units have gas packs in them. They don't want to burn gas anymore. So how do I provide heat pump solutions in products that we typically never provided heat pump solutions in the past? We do a little bit now. Eliminate the gas for heating and get less than 10 and not increase the footprint, right? Because all these distribution centers have load ratings, weight on the roof, all this kind of stuff that they don't want to change the curb. And I can't get bigger and I can't get heavier. So that is going to be our biggest technical challenge, not only for us as a company, but for us as an industry as well. Erica, I don't know. I didn't introduce Erica earlier, but Erica works on my team. She's a strategy leader for technology around electrification of heating. And
what you said, Ken, is right there, but maybe in the bigger picture, a big hurdle is just understanding what our customers need, what they actually need. Because today when we say, what do you need for heating? They'll say, we need exactly what we were getting with our boiler. But that's not actually true. You know, we can do some energy analysis and understand what the actual need is. But it's very difficult to design a product when the customer says they need something that's almost impossible to design or very difficult.
yeah,
So bridging the gap between technology that's feasible and understanding what the customer actually needs is probably one of the biggest obstacles that we need to overcome so that we can go fast.
and I'll see your hand, but I'll answer one more thing too, right? So we see a huge opportunity as we start to do these boiler replacements. We're talking about 200-degree water, right? What about 300-degree steam, right? We see a huge opportunity getting into industrial spaces. So this is not a challenge for us. We're not in these spaces today, but this is a big opportunity, right? Where we're typically designing water-to-water condensers. Now we're talking about steam condensers, right? Metallurgy changes, methods of manufacturing changes. all these, because we see this as a big opportunity to get into low-grade steam, right? And we've got a lot of work going on with the Department of Energy right now on some FOAs trying to understand some of these implications, because we see electrification of heating in the industrial space is probably a bigger market for us than electrification of heating in the built environment, believe it or not. So
we only have time for one last question.
I promised
Yes,
your
Vivian.
hand.
I actually, there's one other significant pressure on the residential market that you haven't talked about, which is getting installed systems a single point of contact and having upgrades to your heating, your cooling, and your hot water fully installed and coordinated. Because right now you've literally got to call 3 different
That's
vendors.
not the way the business works, unfortunately.
But does Trane, because you talked about 4,000 Trane
Yep.
engineers out there in the field.
On the commercial side.
So is there, because this I think is a threshold that makes it, if you're just swapping out like-kind technology, you just change one hot water furnace with a heat pump. It's something else. But most people are actually in the process of trying to figure out, how do I add air conditioning to my house and upgrade my heating? And by the way, since I've got waste hot water, can I get my hot water system integrated? We're really at a point where the homeowner just has no clue how to make an integrated system work. And actually most field teams don't know how to make an integrated system work.
Don't disagree with you. And we frankly, we don't know how to answer that question.
I mean, it's not an area of research for you guys, because it is a storage tank. The hot water tank is sitting there
for sure,
waiting to be a storage tank.
For sure.
More than just, hot showers.
For sure.
It seems like integrated systems and install agents that can really deliver turnkey stuff is.
I like the idea. I just don't know how we're going to pull it off given the way our market works in the residential space. Sorry.
Thanks for the very good and hard questions. Please join me in giving Ken a round of applause. Ken will stick around for just a couple of minutes after this, but I just want to thank all of you for coming, and thank you for being here.